In April of '92, I started breaking out in sores. But the sores wouldn't go away, irregardless of what was put on them.
They said that the Gulf War was this perfectly clean medical miracle, that no one got hurt, and we're living proof that people did get hurt.
All the chemical and biological weapons that we learn about have immediate effects. No one ever discusses something that makes you sick 6 months later.
This is horrible. This is America. I personally feel that my own country killed my child.
The Gulf War was hailed as the ultimate clean war, the coalition victory attained with miraculously low Allied casualties. But 3 years later, thousands of Gulf War soldiers are sick and asking, was I poisoned by my own country? As the sickness spirals, governments are being forced to reveal the myriad of hazards the troops faced. Evidence now points to chemical and biological fallout, to the hazardous gases of the oil fire smoke, the toxic dust of depleted uranium shells, unapproved injections and pills, and petrochemical poisoning.
I really don't think that the government bureaucracies of any country was actually prepared for what happened with Desert Storm. And what has happened with Desert Storm is that the technology of modern warfare has outstripped the capabilities to deal with the end results. What we need to do now is, instead of concentrating on all these new weapons and things, is figure out what the weapons that we're using are going to do to our troops.
Since 500,000 troops returned to the US, many are terrified they have brought a mystery illness back with them. Some are so sick they can't work anymore. Wives and children claim to be developing the same symptoms. Some veterans have committed suicide. While virtually unreported in Britain, the severity of Desert Storm syndrome with its increasing numbers have forced Congress to investigate their claims.
I have respiratory tract problems, and I don't bleed normally like I used to have clotting problems.
Diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, bleeding gums, loose teeth, mucus leaking from my eyes and my nose constantly.
I started getting the runs all the time. The muscle and joint pain were bad. I started losing my hair.
Well, I can't sleep at night. I can't breathe. I can't swallow.
I'm having problems with my bowel movements. I'm having problems with my kidneys. I'm having aches. I'm having numbness. I'm having pain that just it's a dull pain, don't go away.
Memory, I can't remember right. Memory, you know, I lose my memory sometimes.
I thought maybe it was just me. I was getting older and maybe I wasn't eating right or something like that. But then all of a sudden, I started getting phone calls, and other members of the American Legion were getting phone calls from soldiers that were having similar symptoms, the fatigue and the aching joints primarily. And then we started getting reports of people that were having rashes and hair loss and bleeding gums and a lot more physical problems than what I was experiencing. And they were getting the same response. It's all psychological.
Every morning I would get up and I would cough up a phlegm out of my lungs. It was literally so dark and so thick that you could cut it with a knife. And it's funny because when I went to the Veterans Administration, they gave me a complete physical, and I told them about the pain in my chest and the coughing up of sputum, the frequent urinations. The doctor said that I was totally healthy and that was natural in some persons.
What did you make of that?
Well, when he told me that, I knew they were crazy.
I was with Ghost Troop, second of the 2nd ACR, and I was an M1A1 tank crewman. I was the loader on the captain's tank. I loved it. Being in a cav is something special. They do their work serious, and they take it serious. It was in March that I got sick, and I couldn't do really too much of anything. Within a couple of weeks, I lost probably around 60 pounds, and at that time, I was crawling in and out of my tank. I couldn't walk too good, and I was so weak I just couldn't move except to crawl in and do my job and come out and rest. They figured I had AIDS or something like that, and they put a little shelter out in the middle of the desert away from everybody and left me out there, and the IV had went empty and it backed up and blood was just coming out, and I was just there by myself, and they were scared to touch me.
I was in the psychiatric ward for 5.5 months. There they did a medical board and determined that I would be retired from the Army on 50% disability. I repeatedly asked them to look at the other things that were wrong with me, and they continued to claim that this was a psychological disorder. And that's all there was.
But Sylvia's physical condition has left her unable to work. She's dissatisfied with the system. Her medical state remains undiagnosed and untreated.
They want to blame it on something that they know about. They want to say, it's easy for them to say, well, if you have AIDS or HIV, it's easy for them to test for that and show it's positive, and then they can fall on that and say, well, that's why you're like that.
I finally went on to Indiana University Hospital in Indianapolis, and a doctor there found that my immune system was broke down. I had no immune system, and he requested that the military doctors then do a liver biopsy. They refused. I was verbally chastised for going outside of the military system. I was told that I could and may lose my military medical benefits if I continued to seek help outside of the military system, and they would not pay this doctor.
Nick Kresh only spent 6 days in the Gulf and is now so sick he can't work. No one has diagnosed his problem. The Army treats him with drugs.
January, March of '92, the muscle spasms started going on, the rectal bleeding. I started passing out all the time. The headaches started getting worse. The bleeding gums, it'd bleed without touching them, and it even hurt to eat. And then that's when they started hitting the drugs. Morphine at first, and then methadone, then Percocets, then Darvon or Demerol. You know, they give you so much medication you can't feel anything anyways.
Of the 231,000 US troops discharged after the war, 72,000 have received help through the veterans' hospitals. The government has been forced to start a Persian Gulf registry, but many have been barred from receiving treatment.
When he was deployed, Michael was perfectly healthy. Within a week after arriving in the Gulf, Michael started rectal bleeding. He also had chest pain, a rash. No diagnostic procedures were done on my son whatsoever. No blood test, no x-rays, nothing.
Some soldiers were allowed to waive their exit physicals to get home faster, not realizing that this could be a life and death decision. Soldiers pronounced fit could not claim later on that they were suffering a war-related illness.
Michael never saw a doctor, tried to contact several VA hospitals in Washington, D.C. and Walter Reed Army Medical Center. He was told that he did not qualify for medical treatment. And by the time we found out that Michael had cancer, he was near the end of his life. It was too late.
Veterans with officially recognized service-related disabilities are entitled to free health care through hospitals run by the Department of Veterans Affairs. Those still in the forces are treated by military hospitals. The leading one is the Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington.
We're doing all that I know to do. We're doing all that medical science knows to do. We've used all the consultants from civilian institutions that there are. We've asked Congress for help for further funding and resources. We've set systems into place to identify and follow these ill veterans or service personnel. I think the one area where we haven't done enough is in communicating all of this to those who are ill.